Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Entelocius. My name is Paul. To start this episode, I think it is fitting to invoke what we have already covered, but more specifically in terms of momentum and contribution, to define the extent those subjects happen to work together. I want to illustrate their technical work, their energetic collaboration, their intractable reparation of sparse pool, and their pivotal origins insofar as motor concision. When I say pool, I mean to refer to approximately an example of a closed system appurtenance of an ecosystem. Thus far, we have rhizomatic functions, corporations, duplicities, and groups. As indispensable as these seem individually, so to speak, personally I prefer to liken them within their pool or mutual playground to convergent dynamics. They are more materialized and better figured when gaze achieves experimental reprieve, when they are in consequence disjuncted carefully and, towards the pupil of distraction, made functionally obtuse, quizzical, and unseen. Insofar as we liken them to pillars, we will neither formally court nor see them again. Invocations are pleas or tokens for approval, and they are frequently the chance for survival. They are neither the first nor the last resort, but the sole resort, the treasury of the soul. They are disarrayed inviolable to closure, where reticulation is prematurely terminated. Further, they can bog down if undue stress is sought. With that in mind, let us explore what we already have, or what we have already invoked. Functions like emergence are sycophantic and pernicious, and so are themselves synecdochically like the weather. They depend on themselves and a placeholder, the upheld future, exactly the same. Conversely, corporations are ravenously, and from their most impartial reserve, independent, and their interminable propagations seem like apt follow-ups from the contiguous walls instilled from functions. Two walls are known to always give way. Duplicities are logically codependent and the most intensive demanding origin, and within the hive or nest which is composed of their dependencies, they become indistinguishable from their activation. Finally, groups automatize and diminish dependence except from themselves, and for this reason they are reciprocal to corporations, in that they do not hunger. Another way to put it is that, if functions grow tools like grasses, corporations deploy them, duplicities complexify and redefine them, and groups vectorize them. In more accurate physical order, duplicities intervene in pace with functions, while groups obtain from and mutually intensify corporations. These parallel experiences are like woodland horns from different sides, egregious and obstreperous, but mirrored and copious to a finite, semi-fine, or quasi-coarse point. Dependencies are difficult to resolve from filamentous distances, where they are neither weighted from their scales nor expectant from point B, but they are nevertheless subjects of utmost concern. Hence, allusions and hyperextensions of the four above pillars are required, and in keeping with somatic motor ideology, for the present subject I will grapple them from a chronological, organic to synthetic rotation, or, stated otherwise, in reflection of the gradual dissolution of sane vision, the loss of dependence, and, later, the supervention of psychotic machine. When we are gazing most deeply, we are accustomed to and profoundly ingrained with the body. The body is, at this point of contention, absolute. Vision neither turns around nor turns inward, and instead to stabilize its argument from relativity, it interprets physical infractions and accustoms higher orders, which emanate from the very first pitch of its intrasubjective corpora, namely the collection. The human body rigorously counts its invocations, that is, its somatic repetitions, its intrastellar apotheoses, to the capacity of its extremities. The maxima for any which physical event is harbored sanely within the conventional polity of fingers and toes. And the wisdom of somatic dependency occurs at beck and behest. The constant pulls of union towards oneself, to the variable extent oneself is conjoined at somatic hips. The blood is called to its regions where it is usurped. The mucosa yearns and detracts as far as it may, and water is retained and rolled evenly. The functions of the body are implicit and self-collected, and corporations own the final word of the body, but whether this is a staple or in contravention of value-ladenness remains to be explored. Importantly, however, the body is straightforward, reverentially so, and for this reason it is the single most potent disbursement of visual connection. Immediately in the distance gazing upwards, however, the elites are in view. They are the eclipse or the interlude between imperceptible disjunctions. They are the transition from dark to light, and for this reason may be accused of not only arrogant pretense, but infantilism, of petty theft of meaningful attention. The elite cabal is an interesting performance in that its material subversion of pillars, in and of themselves, is its sensitive, desperate impracticality, but their fraudulence in towards the group semiotic is far too ostentatious and univocal to provide interspersion, to carry their self-perceived magnitudes abundantly, and far too obscene and preponderant to make them interesting, and thus they move and depart quickly. In their wake, however, we are vested with their impressions, which are for the most part, but not exclusively, financial, and in our haste to affix vestigial values, we leave quite a mess. Conflicts of interest are notoriously messy, in that they do not ever seem to be remedied to taste. The palate for interest is ever-changing, and conflicts are in our nature. Conflicts of interest are a bit like the effect from an infinitesimal cast of light when a room is illuminated and rods and cones are forced to adjust. They are the stroke or shear from the strain of adjustment, and they are problematic indeed. Next, the scene is surprised in perpetuity, in equivalence functionally with, ironically, traducement. The act of surprise is an imposed facultative injury, and as such the systematic accordance is equivalent to the propertic conflict for awakeness, to being jolted into tacit traversal of vision. We are reminded, and importuned to remind ourselves, of the line of sight. Further, the act of becoming awake can be likened to momentary pains, with much the same attribution and intent as from Buddhist thought. The transcendence of surprise is, to my thinking at least, equivalent to Buddhistic or Hindu enlightenment. Within the same span of concrescence, we are dealt amendments. Begging my pardon, but when I say amendments are like trifles or interferences, for this is exactly what I mean and what I intend to mean, I do not intend to conflate their possible significations for insipid natures. Amendments are like technological disruptions, whose legal invocations have apparently gathered power unlike other legal codifications, which we will explore in a future video, though in much the same way as what transpires, at least according to cultural or hopeful parlance, if not literally, with sectors of technology. Amendments riddle inconveniently and rear their heads at the right moments, and for these reasons they are indispensable, inasmuch as they also provide vested counterpoints to notable or noteworthy duplicities. At this point, the fabric of the rhizomorph becomes subconscious. Merely its links remain, and they remain to be explored. In short and descending order of, at least, relative Wittgensteinian signification, we have file systems, blocks, and scaffolding in wood. Firstly, the file system is largely characterized by a few taps linking into central access points. Hardware, most often, is the de facto central access point. Neural activity in file systems have much in common, while neural activity also requires a tap to propagate its cohesion. Following file systems, we have blocks, in the sense not only conveyed from information theory, but also as they are partially enacted and retributed within motor terms. Blocks are self-organized to their likeness and manually organized for prevarication and reception. At large, blocks like seating blocks or reservations affirm castes and social convenience and provide implicit derogations. At the root of the subconscious appearance, we are held together with scaffolding in various woods, which are always, insofar as their abundance is, covered, watched, and seen. From the turgid point of view of dependencies, every iota of unspoiled wood is sublimated and reincarnated, and woods are thus the motor archetype for what I call l'objet fou, or the object of madness, which is an organic denigration of life itself. Such a property is less important than that it makes requirement to be disjuncted at its least estimable position in order to be sensibilized, and is consequently deterritorialized. L'objet fou makes requirement of vicarious idealizations, and this function is realized most fully and lastingly with the production of maple syrup in Quebec, where the most intrinsic property of the tree is honored and abated recursively with protectorates, naturalistic situation, log cabin inhabitants, and marriage to season. This is what I call the duplicity of the behalf, which for living architecture is equivalent to copious understatement. Maple syrup production in Quebec is like a fractal tap or a spinal column, in that it tries to make its own backbone, and its connection to means production is a spiritual success. For another example, Medical patients prefer intermediate amounts of wood in hospital rooms, which reflects the completed wooden environment. And the dual result of disliking excess or too little wood suggests wood compels the emergence of an interesting behavioral property. Ultimately, the fundamentality of desire escapes the situated organicity of wood. Your deck is obsolesced with change, and for this every reason is immaterialized directly from you at every moment, but that does not stop you from enjoying it. Alright, shameless plug. I'm the creator of an original, credible permutation of psychotherapy or talk therapy called somatic informatical therapy, with a strong influence owing to Deleuze and Guattari. You can purchase the guidebook on Amazon through the link in the description. It has good merit equally to academicians, clinicians, and lay people, and I encourage you to purchase it particularly if you want to cite some of my ideas, including the Entelocius in an academic context. I also have a Patreon for anyone who is generous enough to contribute. And with that, I'm at the end of episode 5. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please click like and subscribe. I encourage opinions, discussion, and suggestions in the comments below, particularly if you know any rhizomatic scholars or theories deserving of attention or integration. Episode 6 is about geographies. So, mind your path, raise your vision, reach your arms, and steal your sight. Rhizomatic transcendence is around the corner. See you again.